Be excellent to each other and party on, dudes. I'm back with an analysis of my BUG Beanstalk league that I just played earlier today. I was able to trophy, and I'm going to walk you through everything that I did. And we're going to look at all 5 matches plus a quick bonus match. So let's jump over to MTGO. You may notice that I'm running it in a Mac. I'm using this tool called Parallels. If anybody's curious about how they could do that, just hit me up and I'll show you how. But if the UI looks weird or anything, that's why. So here's the list. You can see that I'll just tell you the important, interesting things about it. So 8 fetch lands. We're running full 20 lands. Usually Beanstalk only runs 19 lands. Well, why are we running 20 lands when we only need to run 19? Isn't it bad to draw extra lands? Yeah, it is usually, but look at the meta right now. This is post Modern Horizons 3, and Wasteland is everywhere. 63.3% of decks are running an average of 3.5 Wastelands. It is by far the most played card in Legacy, and I don't see any reason why that's going to change, especially with all the 12 post. And like Modern Horizons really amped up the ramp decks, and so you're going to see me go against some of those, like Eldrazi, for example. So I'm playing a ton of land here, and then I'm barely playing any green. I'm playing 4 Beanstalks and 1 Life from the Lump. That's it. And then in the sideboard, I'm playing a Carpet and I'm playing a Pernicious Deed. Why so little green? What happened to Witherbloom command? Well, it turns out with all these Wastelands everywhere, it's really hard to get to 2 mana, let alone 3, to be able to cast your spells through Daze. And you generally want to be able to fetch basics like Basic Island, Basic Swamp here in the sideboard. So it was just a huge liability to have to go get a tropical island all the time and then get wasted and be behind a land and everything like that. And it's just hard to keep the green around. So I am still playing 3 green sources, but I only fetch them when I need to, when I feel confident that I've got enough mana to do what I need to do. So if you look at the threats here, the other thing of note is that I'm running Psychic Frog. Psychic Frog is a really powerful creature. Let's pop this out so you can look at it. So Psychic Frog says, when Psychic Frog deals damage to a player or a planeswalker, draw a card. Wow. It's like Orphidian, that old vintage staple from like 10, 15 years ago, except it's 1 mana cheaper. And it has a lot of other abilities too. It's blue and black, so it pitches to Force. It also pitches to Grief, unfortunately, because that's like the big deck that everybody's playing. Something like 30% of the Legacy meta is Rescaminator, and you're going to see some matches against these brutal blue-black decks today. But you can discard a card and you can pump it. So it's got kind of like the Wild Mongrel text to it. You just discard, but it's a permanent +1/+1 counter. So you can just turn 2, play this out, dump your entire hand and have like a 6/7 in play, or maybe even a 7/8 if you're on the draw, right? It's crazy powerful. And you can also give it evasion. You can exile 3 cards from your graveyard and give it flying. And what does exiling cards from the graveyard pair really well with? Murktide Regent. So our threat sheet is very simple. We're playing 4 Psychic Frog, 4 Murktide, and then we've moved Bowmasters to the sideboard. Bowmasters is still an amazing card in Legacy, but it's only really amazing against blue decks and white decks. Like, it's very strong against like Death and Taxes. But I generally, it's a terrible card against like Moon Stompy, or it's a pretty terrible card against 12 post, right? It's almost comically bad. So I throw them in the board, and then I just board them in as additional threats against control decks, or I might take out some number of frogs or even Murktides to make room for them against like combo decks like Doomsday, for example. So those are the main changes. The other big change, I'm playing 8 main deck removals. Gone completely is Shieldred's Edict. I don't think it's good enough in today's meta. Like, Rescaminator has a lot of creatures, and you want to make sure you kill the right creature, not the worst creature on the table, which unfortunately Shieldred's Edict, they just sacrificed the weakest non-token creature, right? And decks that use Dark Depths like Merit Lage, that's one great argument in favor of using Shieldred's Edict. I just don't run into them all that often. So what I'm doing instead is I'm playing a full for fatal pushes, which is never something I would have considered in the past, but it's so good right now. It kills almost everything. And then I'm playing the 2 dismembers that were in the sideboard in the main deck. Sideboard wise, on MTGO, I'm playing 3 Force Negation just because I run into a ton of like glass cannon combo decks like Oops All Spells or Necro Dominance and stuff like that. And you just need to be able to force and then move on with your life. You don't want to play against those decks. I don't know why people don't play them, frankly. Like, I've just never understood the allure. I can respect a deck that takes multiple turns to like build up a game plan, but just trying to win immediately, it's just kind of boring in my opinion. So I just jam some forces and hope it works. But in terms of side, like, I still think Nile Spellbomb is the best graveyard removal card. It's really strong against Cephalid Breakfast, which is like 5% of the meta right now. It's really good against Rescam because you just park it out there and you don't have to worry about them discarding it. Like, if they have grief, they'll grief you and they'll take away your surgical extraction before they go for an Entomb Atraxa line or an Entomb Archon line. And Hydroblast, I went down from 3 to 2 because I genuinely think that Hydroblast is red's just not as strong as it used to be. You can solo red with Psychic Frog. If they're on Moon Stompy and you get a Psychic Frog out, they just don't play removal. And Eldrazi also doesn't play removal. Not that like Eldrazi would care about Hydroblast, but Psychic Frog is just a legit threat that if you happen to play against somebody who does not respect creatures at all in their deck and just plans to like bash you to death without caring about interacting with your side of the board, Psychic Frog is an excellent answer for those kinds of problems. The last card I'll mention is Life from the Loam. Because it's 1 green and 1 colorless, it's a lot more castable than Witherbloom Command, and it does have positive synergy with Psychic Frog because you can dump your hand, refill, and then put 3 additional counters on Psychic Frog. Pretty strong for 2 mana. And I'm not sure if this ultimately belongs in the deck, but you'll see that it does come in handy more than once during this league. I definitely think that this could be swapped out for another Stifle. I think 2 Stifle is totally defensible. I think 3 Daze is also defensible, although I chose to go with a slightly smaller package just because it felt really bad to be putting lands back in my hand with how fast everything's going in the meta. So let's get into the game. I hope you don't mind that really extended deck tech. Okay, so first, let's take a look at this is a match that, like, I was just closing out a league. This is before I started, but it's kind of cool because this showcases the deck's range, right? We're up against Goblin King, and I was like, oh, okay, they always play Goblin. Like, I looked at their list, and they always played Goblin, so I was like, okay, they're on Goblin. But can this beat Goblin? Well, it's got double up the Beanstalk. I think that this, if anything, can beat Goblin. Let's try it. So I went ahead and kept this, and it was not like an easy keep. It was kind of like, because if they Goblin Lackey you, that's a problem. But I was like, well, maybe I'll be able to find a force, and then if I get Beanstalk, that's how I break parity and just draw a bunch of cards. So I found a Force of Will, which is great because now I can stop Goblin Lackey. And this wasn't what I signed up for. It's Reanimator, and it's not like the Rescaminator. It's like straight black, kind of more glass cannon-y. Glass cannon being like you fire it once and the cannon gets destroyed. The whole point is like you just have a big opening salvo, you dump your hand, and hopefully at the end of the, you don't care about what's in their hand because you won. Basically, that's kind of like the strategy of these turn 1 decks or turn 2 decks in the case of Reanimator. So luckily I had Force Negation, which is just a very clean answer to Faithless Looting. So I go ahead and do that. And whenever you're up against these decks, you just want to stop them from being able to put big fatties in their graveyard. So here, Psychic Frog, and I waste them, and they're not really doing a lot, and I've just amassed this incredible advantage with double Beanstalk. They come and they unmask me. I'm like, sure, I'm just going to force that. I'll draw 2 cards instead of discarding a card. How about that? And then they're like, Exhume. And they're trying to get their Archon back. So I just counter that too. Draw 2 cards. And even if they get it out, like, and I had a Daze for their Animate Dead. Even if they got it out, Murderous Cut, drawing me 2 cards, is not embarrassing against Archon. Yes, I'd lose my Psychic Frog, but I would be able to draw more cards. So I did not expect to be fighting against them here. So it's kind of scary. Let's go ahead and go into game 2. And this is not a hand I would normally keep, but because we're against a glass cannon deck, I think it's okay to keep a hand that doesn't have any land. So they duress me. I let it happen. I've still got Force Blue. I draw another Force. Just an incredible top deck. So they're going to have a hard time getting me off Force of Will. They double Thoughtseize me here, and I've still got lots of counter magic off. It's crazy. They've got to be exasperated here. I'm not drawing any lands, though, and I'm just going to have to go to discard here if they don't do anything. But luckily they do Entomb. And as I said earlier, you fight over the enablers. The first enabler, which gets the creature in the graveyard, and then every reanimation spell they have is basically a dead draw. And if they never get a creature in the yard, like their deck plays, I think 12 reanimation spells, but only 8 enablers. If you think about Entomb as an enabler and Faithless Looting, so some decks will just some players will just keep drawing until they have enough cards in their hand they can naturally discard a Gristlebrand or something like that. But they have 4 cards in their hand, so that's not going to happen this game. I've got lands, Psychic Frog's on the way. Yeah, did I force that? No, I just let them have it. Okay, so here we are. Psychic Frog's on the table. I do have a force for Show and Tell, thankfully. And Beanstalk, I discard my entire hand, and I'm just going all in, trying to end the game as quickly as possible. I discard the card that they were going to take from Grief, Dodging Grief. I swing in. I probably could just discard all these cards. I keep Surgical in my hand. And now they're going to attempt to reanimate my frog that I had in my yard, but I Surgical my own frog to keep them from doing that, and they're just dead on board. Frog just is so strong. So all I did there, to recap, was kept them at bay long enough to resolve a frog, and then just started beating them, drawing extra cards, and yeah, it was a nice clean win. So let's go back in here. Let's take a look at the first game of the league. So that was just me kind of warming up, finishing out a league that, frankly, I didn't do very well in that previous league. I think I just had a cold streak, so it felt really good to sit down and have a 5-0 here. And it's actually technically a 4-0-1 because the server crashed game 3, but we are going to be able to view 2 of those games. Okay, so round 1 against Brancusi. Now, what I do with my opponents, and I encourage you to do this too, is I always look them up and see what they play. And unfortunately, during this game, because I'm in China and the Great Firewall and everything, and my my thing is like a VPN, but it's not exactly a VPN. Normal VPNs don't work in China. You have to get really deep under the internet to get through it. But I couldn't look this person up, so I had no idea what they were playing. But had I been able to look them up, I would have seen they were playing the Epic Storm. So I was able to restart and fix my network, and then for the subsequent matches, I didn't know what people were playing. But for this, I went in blind. So I wasn't sure. Of course, we had some nice banner during the game, which I think I started talking after we realized MTGO doesn't put this in real time. So I don't know exactly when we started talking about this, but this hand looks good. Again, I don't know they're on Storm. Otherwise, I would definitely mull this because this is an extremely fair hand. I would have mulled to find a some sort of force interaction, but I didn't find it. So here we go. Luckily, I do have a Stifle, and because I don't know what they're on, I'm just going to hold up Stifle and hope that I can screw with their game plan. But had I known, Stifle is incredibly powerful against Storm, I would have just held it probably and waited for them to try to Tendrils me. All right. Yeah, and by the way, Stifle stop Storm. That is a very relevant interaction in Legacy, and it has been for 20 years. Okay, so Dark Ritual, Lion's Eye Diamond, Galvanic Relay. See, this is definitely something I would have stifled here, but no point in trying to counter it here. So what they revealed some insane bangers. Song of Creation, which lets you draw a card every time you cast a spell, Lion's Eye Diamond, Chrome Mox, and a Burning Wish. So double kind of like win cons. Like there's no way. Luckily, I draw a Force of Will, so I do have kind of a second a second way to stop them. Otherwise, I would have been totally screwed, and I probably would have lost. So lucky top deck here saves me, and I'm just gonna keep beating them down because what else can I do? I've got no graveyard because I already exiled my graveyard. So they're coming in. I have to force the Veil. They echo, and I am luckily able to force negation the echo so I don't have to deal with it again because usually that can be flashed back. And then they Burning Wish. And this is super dicey because like, oh, they're going to go get Galvanic Relay. But I have a Daze. And Daze prevents them from being able to relay. So they have to go get something else with the Burning Wish. So they get an Echo of Eons that they can use next turn. But, I mean, Echo of Eons, first of all, it's going to give me a whole bunch of mana. Or it's going to give me a fresh grip, like get all these dead cards out of my hand, and it's also going to make Murktide even bigger. Echo is not an answer; it's just like a desperation thing, and they agreed and they packed it up. All right, game 2. Sorry that it keeps like showing OBS whenever I do that. Okay, OBS being the open source, open broadcasting software that probably every streamer, every YouTuber is familiar with that. Okay, so Brancusi, game 2. All right, and this time I know they're on Storm, so I am keeping a grip of disruptive cards. We got Pyroblast, or Hydroblast rather. We've got Spell Pierce, and we've got Force of Will. This is a great keep, and I'm going to keep this. And Bowmasters is surprisingly good against Storm. It's not like an insane card. I mean, it doesn't just break open the match, but because they can still do whatever they wanted to do, but they're going to take a bunch of damage in the process with Bowmasters. So I would never keep like a hand against Storm just on the basis of Bowmasters. It's just a nice to have kind of thing. What you really want is you want a lot of stack-based interaction like this. So I didn't even bother with Up the Beanstalk because I really need to keep my mana open. I'll Up the Beanstalk later. Okay, so they relay. They play out all their artifacts and they relay. And when that happens, you just have to let it happen. And they had a good flip. Echo of Eons, Beseech the Mirror, which is a win condition essentially. It's like a 1-card combo. And then Chrome Mox. So they have enough mana to do like basically all of this next turn. So thankfully I have this, thick hand thick with Disruption. So I just go ahead and get my green out because eventually I will want to play Up the Beanstalk, but this is the real turn right here. The critical turn, Echo gets force negationed. Then they attempt to Beseech, and I Pierce. And I think at that point, they don't have anything to do, so they scoop. And I think I do actually show them my hand just so they know what's going on, that I had additional. Like, I always try to help Storm players a little bit just to see how close they were, because they wouldn't necessarily know whether they were right to do it. Like, maybe they had other stuff, and the sequencing, it's helpful to, like, give them advice and stuff. So I always share my hand at the end of a close game against Storm. So here we go into round 2. This is versus K-8. All right. And first of all, let's take a look at what we think they're on. We think they're on Scam. They've actually been playing some Beanstalk Control. What's this? Is this Sultai Beans? Sultai Beans. There we go. They're a fellow Beanstalk enthusiasts. They don't have just like a ton of legacy. Like sometimes you play against people that have like pages and pages of results. So also the thing about these matches is like if you haven't played leagues on MTGO, there's a ratcheting effect. They get harder and harder because you're no longer just playing against people that like the first round is always the easiest unless you get paired against like Bosch and Roll or something like that. And then it gets like ratcheting each round is harder and harder if you're winning because you're going up against people who've won their 3 games or their 4 games or their, so these first few rounds are a little bit more breezy and then the pressure comes on later. But Tamiyo, I do take her pretty seriously. Unfortunately, my hand, while quite interactive, doesn't have a black source. And so I'm going to have to brainstorm and see if I can find a black source. And I do. I find a Polluted Delta. And I'm going to push, but they do have the Daze. And that's okay. Tamiyo is not the most dangerous Planeswalker on Earth. It is a 1-mana Planeswalker, though. And it is kind of a pain to get rid of her. Luckily, Psychic Frog, one of the many pushed aspects of it is you don't actually have to deal damage to a player. You can deal it to a planeswalker. So when I'm attacking Tamiyo, I am going to get cards here. So she flips Tamiyo here. So if you're unfamiliar with Tamiyo, essentially when you attack, it's a 0/3 flyer. It creates clue tokens, which you can pay to crack and draw a card. So it's an engine. It's just like a mana-intensive engine. And here, my opponent flips Tamiyo by pondering, in addition to their bauble trigger and the card they drew. That was their third card for turn. And so now they have this Planeswalker. Plus ability is super weak. But basically, it just gives attacking creatures a -1, -0. -3 ability is quite good because you can get back instants and sorceries. And you can even get mana off of it if you're getting back a green card. I don't know how often that comes up. And then the ultimate is quite good. I mean, it's just like an insane ultimate. It's like a Jace the Mind Sculptor type ultimate almost. You draw half your deck. So not bad for a 1 mana card that it can draw half your deck if given time, right? So yeah, I need to get to business. I need to get busy beating this down. So I'm going to go ahead and cast my frog here. Of course, they're doing everything they can to restrict my mana and try to press their advantage. Second wasteland. Wait, was that the second one? No, I wasted them, and then they wasted me. Okay, so I'm attacking in. And I am going to pitch a couple cards just to try to speed up the damage on Tamiyo and get her a little weaker. So here, I'm going to try to click slower. I'm aware that I'm clicking too quickly here. Okay. So we go into combat, and there, Beanstalk. That's a great rip. So I'm going to probably just, I mean, I could definitely ponder to try to find land, make my land drop, or if I Beanstalk and I don't hit land, that's pretty bad. I think I'm just going to attack first and see if I draw a card. Like, see if I draw a land. Get my card. Psychic Frog's so good. Such a good card. All right, so we get our card. What is it? What do we got for us? All right, a land. Okay, so now we don't need to worry about our land drop. I think it's correct to just go ahead and play out the Beanstalk. Although, in retrospect, I definitely should have held the... I should have tapped the Underground Sea just in case they had a wasteland so I could keep blue open for forcing with Daze protection. Again, very tiny thing, but it does matter in these extremely tight games that you're going to experience if you go on MTGO right now. All right. Shieldred's Edict. I can force this. Luckily, they didn't have a wasteland for my Underground Sea, and they scoop. Psychic Frog is too strong. All right, game 2. Let's get back to game 2. All right, there. Okay, so I'll show you how I boarded. So I believe this is almost certainly like a troll, or not troll, orc matchup. So I took all my tempo out. I took out my 2 Dazes. I took out my Stifle. I took out my Spell Pierce. Those 4 tempo cards. I took out my Force of Negation. I only keep Force of Negation in when it's like a true, combo matchup usually. Or if it's against lands, I'll keep it in because it hits Life and Loam. And then I didn't board in my basic, which I definitely think I could have, and I think I do that the subsequent round because they go after my, I think they go after my blue-black lands. That happens a lot, by the way. You definitely want to have a basic source of black because black's a very important color in this deck. So that's how I boarded. I just brought in the 4 orcs. Oh, and I brought in Carpet of Flowers. Okay. Always bring that in when it's a wasteland matchup and they're playing blue. Okay, so here we go. Nethergoyf, great card from Modern Horizons 3. It is one of the better 1-drops in the format, in my opinion. It's definitely the best black creature in the 1-drop slot. I think it's better than the one with Menace, the Stalactite Stalker. Okay, so I get an Underground Sea, and I'm just like, I've got enough land that especially with Lorien Revealed, I'm not worried about getting wasted out of the game. And I just ponder. And what am I looking for here? I think I keep that because it had a second Wasteland, and Wasteland is going to be really good in this matchup. I mean, obviously, wasting when your opponent already has a threat on the table is dangerous. They get Psychic Frog. I really have to cut this frog ASAP. So I fill up my graveyard, and I think I just go for it. But, I push. I don't Murderous Cut because I can Murderous Cut later if I get a Beanstalk out. And yeah, they're wasting me. They're putting the squeeze on me. Now Spell Bomb is not a card I would board in here, but it doesn't really hurt. I don't think boarding in Graveyard Hate against Beanstalk is smart. Like I think, but they may not have realized that I was on Beanstalk because my deck does look very similar to their deck. Like I'm playing Frog. I'm doing a lot of blue-black stuff. I'm wasting a lot. So I do fetch green, and that should give away that I'm on some sort of green strategy, maybe Uro, or much better than Uro, Beanstalk. Yeah, so we're just kind of chilling here. They're hitting me for 5 a turn now, and note that 5 is bigger than Dismember. So I cannot kill this thing, and I die. So their gambit of bringing in Nile Spellbomb did stop my Murktide, so I should eat my words. Graveyard Hate does work against Beanstalk. All right, game 3. So I'm on the play, and just double check the sideboard because I do. I brought the swamp in. Yeah, basic swamp. I'll sing its praises. I think basic swamp is so much better than having a Bayou in your deck. All right. So this is a removal heavy deck, but I've heard that the way that you beat Rescam is by just removing all their creatures. I mean, granted, if they resolve an Atraxa, they're going to have a huge advantage, but I mean, you can remove Atraxa too with Murderous Cut. So here we are. They open with a predictable Wasteland, and I do have Basic Island in my deck, so I'm just like, okay. And then they have another Wasteland. So, like, they're kind of in a tough spot here because I've got access to colored mana and they don't. So I think I can flash in a Bowmaster's end step here. I'm not sure if I should do it now. I'm being patient with the Bowmaster. Much rather get a Frog out there because Frog is Bowmaster proof. They push it, which is fine. So 1-for-1. Nethergoyf. Definitely know to be careful about Nethergoyf. It can get pretty big pretty quickly. I wasted land, and Psychic Frog's on the table. It hasn't been removed yet. It's worth noting that the only lands they have... Okay, they forced a negation my Fatal Push because they're really banking on this Nethergoyf to get them there. Seeing this, they have no other colored mana. Oh, there they go. Okay, so they have a Brainstorm coming end step. Okay, and they remove my Underground Sea, as I predicted would happen. Carpet just isn't that necessary here because Psychic Frog is going to carry me very far here. So they do exile some cards from my graveyard, which is fine. I drew yet another removal spell, which is great. So I'm going to attack. They block with Tamiyo. I'm not sure about this block. They have tons of life. There's no reason to block here. I guess they just want to deny me a card. But I pitch here, and then after I pitch, I was like, let's Bowmaster. Because they're hellbent. They have 0 cards in hand, so I don't have to worry about them dazing here. And I can basically very card efficiently, I just pitch 1 card to get rid of Tamiyo there. So they're hearsing, but instead of letting those cards power up the hearse, I can just use Psychic Frog's ability to exile them myself. So I just exile 3 cards. And their hearse basically has nothing to target. They're going to have to start targeting their own graveyard now. Now, it is worth noting that Psychic Frog can only exile cards in batches of 3. All right, and I'm swinging in, drawing a card, feeling pretty good. Brainstorming, Wastelanding, keeping them off their colored sources. They do now Spellbomb here, hit my yard so they can draw a card, but that does trigger Bowmaster. And now that I push the Nethergoyf, they really are in a tough spot. I think they're really close to conceding here. And so at this point, like, as long as Psychic Frog stays on the table, I'm going to win. They bring back Nethergoyf. And, I don't have to force here, but they've got nothing going on. I mean, they'll be able to crew this. I'm going to force it. Why not? They're like... not dead next turn, but they're very close. So this was a 3. It could potentially be a 4-5. So 4, 5, 6, 7, and I'm drawing a card, they were very close to dead. And with such a variety of threats, like they don't play sweepers, I can definitely see why they conceded there. All right, so that was the first win of the second win of the league. Yeah, that was K8, right? Yeah, and now we're jumping over here to Koike, and so here's what Koike looked like when I looked them up. Nic Fit. Do you think this person's playing Nic Fit? Wow. They've been a dedicated Nic Fit player. Even this is probably Nic Fit. Yep, Veteran Explorer. Man, this person is ride or die Veteran Explorer. So, and they're doing well. I mean, 40th in the Legacy Challenge, not terrible, right? 13th in this Legacy Challenge. They've got lots of league wins. So, yeah, Nic Fit, in my opinion, not even a tier 2 deck, like a tier 3, tier 4 deck, but they're making it work. And these are some pretty exciting games. So, let's jump in. Knowing that they're on Nic Fit does inform my keep. So they are on the play. I'm on the draw. This is not a good hand versus Nic Fit. It doesn't have any removal. Beanstalks are nice, but like they could just explode, and they do. You're going to see Cabal Therapy is very powerful, but I keep it anyway just in case like they have a scam package or something in there. They start with Cabal Therapy, which names Force, I think, always. Yeah, Force of Will. But I've got double of the Beanstalk here. So, yeah, they're going to be able to get the Veteran Explorer, Flashback Therapy, strip both of my Beanstalks. Backbreaking. All right, but the good thing is, like, they've kind of helped me fill up my graveyard a little bit for Murktide. They've got Scavenging Ooze, which can gradually clear my graveyard. Well, I mean, very rapidly, because they've got three lands, 3 green producing lands out because of Veteran Explorer. So, by the way, I just kind of like, just in case you don't know how Veteran Explorer works, when it dies, both players search their library for up to 2 basics. Now, my basic swamp is in my sideboard, so I didn't get that. I only got the island, but it's still helpful. All right, now I've got Psychic Frog out, and they are going to Flare of Cultivation, new card from Modern Horizons 3. It's basically like Cultivate, but you can sacrifice one of your creatures if you want. And so Yavimaya, or Veteran Explorer plus Flare of Cultivation is like 5 lands on turn 1 or something like that. It's crazy. 4 lands, it's really fast. Okay, and then they have not yet removed my Psychic Frog. So I'm going to loam some cards back, and then I'm going to be able to attack. And I'm going to give it flying. No, wait, I'm not giving it flying. I'm just exiling some cards to get a second creature out. So they opt not to block it because I can pump it more than they can pump. This can only add +1/+1 counters if it exiles creatures, and there's only 1 creature in the yard. I've got a full grip filled with lands. Now, I did exile the Life from the Loam earlier, so I'm not going to be able to keep giving it counters, but you know, just cash in your value and move on. You don't have to like live the Loam life just because you happen to draw it with Psychic Frog. There's definitely like a point at which it's just unnecessary to keep recurring lands. Like, I'm attacking them with an 8/9 frog that can potentially jump and fly over their creatures. Yeah, and then of course the Murktide. So they're probably not going to draw something that deals with both of these, and they scoop. Game 2. I'll show you how I sideboarded. So game 2, I'm on the draw again. You sideboard. All right, so I took out a Wasteland in favor of Swamp because they have so many basics. I don't think Wasteland is going to be a relevant card in the matchup. I took out Life from the Loam, as good as it was. It's unnecessary. I'm not going to like Loam Wasteland lock them. And then I took out all the tempo cards because they're on the play, and also because they've just got so many basics. Rarely is a Daze going to come up as relevant. And then I just boarded in Orcs. And I think I boarded in my Deed. Yeah. Pernicious Deed. Okay, Leyline of the Void. Don't board in Leyline of the Void against our deck. But it does actually Yeah, I always say that. Just like earlier, I was like, don't bring in, Graveyard Hate. What was it? Now Spellbomb against Sultai Beans, but they did. Okay, and I see this and I'm kind of scared because I don't have an immediate way to deal with it. If they just go right now with the combo, there's nothing you can do. They play this card, Pillage the Bog, which is a really cool name. Like, why would you pillage the bog? What is useful in the bog? It's just a bunch of muck and swamp. But basically, you look at the top X cards of your library, where X is twice the number of lands you control. Put one of them into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Okay, so it's basically just like it's like a kind of mediocre cantrip. It's like a 2-mana cantrip, but it's in black and green. So black and green, they don't have access to Ponder and Brainstorm, right? All right, Bowmaster's coming in, and I made a really dumb mistake here. I'm so used to like blocking Grief that I pinged them and then I double blocked because I was like, oh, surely this has menace, right? This doesn't have menace, does it? No, it doesn't have menace. So it was totally unnecessary, and actually I think that cost me the game because if I just ping this and block with this, I've got an extra Bowmaster in play. And you'll see what happens later. Like, Bowmaster is really critical in this game. So I draw some cards and they Vraska, like 4-mana Planeswalker. No, I'm not going to let that win the game. So I force it. And Wasteland doesn't do much here, so I just put it back. They're going into the bog again, looking for their AB combo. Scary. I bring in a Bowmasters. I bring in another Bowmasters to attack. Keep in mind, I would have a third Bowmasters in play here if I hadn't dumbly blocked. So they Fatal Push one of my Bowmasters, then they resolve the One Ring. And see, you can imagine like double Bowmasters with the One Ring just makes the One Ring terrible. Like people don't want to tap it because it grows the army so quickly. But unfortunately, they have the combo and I lose. And this is where the server crashes. We can look at the opening hands if it'll even let me replay the game. Okay, so the opening hand before MTGO servers crashed. This is not a great hand. Oh, it just says be excellent wins. So I was mulliganing. I was mulliganing this bad hand when the servers crashed. All right, round 4 versus M Himukai. And as I said earlier, there's like this ratcheting effect. Like the farther you get into the league, the tougher the competition gets until you get to where you're playing these people that are like deck specialists who do nothing but play this deck. And of course, like this person, Doomsday players, they are hardcore. They just sit around all day and think about like different, fringe scenarios. I played against one person that was using like, what was it? Like, it's like a black card that returns a creature from play that you can cycle, Unearth, I think. Yeah, they were playing that, and they were playing like Born Upon a Wind or something like that to give it instant speed. Quicken. Here it is. Okay, Quicken. The next sorcery spell you cast can be cast as though it had flash. So they can like basically go through the Doomsday pile and win at instant speed, which is kind of interesting. Yeah, and this is the Unearth pile. This might actually be the player that did the Unearth trick to somebody a while back. I can't remember. It was like Max Dortion or somebody was tweeting about it. But yeah. So I'm like, oh wow. Like, do you think this person is playing Doomsday? They do have some finishes, but like they've been playing Doomsday aside from like that brief stint with Reanimator and Cascade, which this deck is just not viable anymore, in my humble opinion, with Vexing Bauble. Like, I would never attempt to play this because turn 1 Vexing Bauble. Oh, okay, I can't win anymore. So they've been playing Doomsday for several years, and so I just looked at it. I was like, okay, they're on Doomsday, great. And then like my opener. Let's take a look at the opener that I got. And you generally don't want to keep no landers, but I'm on the draw. I've got the ability to draw a land, and I've got 1, 2 force effects, and lots of blue cards, and I've only got 1 dead card against Doomsday. So I'm like, cool. All right, and turn 1, Ancient Tomb into Vexing Bauble. And generally you want to force Bauble. But the mistake I made was, I'll force it with Force of Will because I can hardcast Force Negation later. I'll have mana. That was really dumb because it turns out they're not on Doomsday. Look at this. So I just pitched my Force of Will, and I've got this Force of Negation. And what's the next spell they cast? Sowing Mycospawn. This card is insane. So they can go and they look for any... and by the way, this ability can't be countered. And if you kick it, you get to exile a land. So it's like a double Wasteland effect. And you'll see them double Wasteland me later. So, of course, I can't do anything about any of this stuff because I kept my freaking Force Negation, right? Like, I could have totally slowed down the ramp, but I just scooped. Like, there's no way I'm coming back. I felt incredibly dumb. First of all, I think it was correct to keep. And I would do that over. I would keep a no-lander against a likely Doomsday player any day of the week if it was that strong of a no-lander. But, unfortunately, they were on Eldrazi. And Eldrazi is a tough matchup. It can turn 3 goldfish people. So I come in here and I'm like, all right, let's try again. Let's give it a shot. Let's take a look at how I boarded in here. So I think I board out all my tempo stuff. And I just board in my my orcs just because it's something that can do something, right? In retrospect, I probably should have boarded in the swamp as well. I think this might be the game where they go after my swamps and exile all my swamps. So, yeah, this is a good hand, a very good hand, because it has removal, has a way to kind of recover some of the card advantage we're going to lose from forcing their threats. And it's got 2 lands, which, as we've established, lands are very important with all the wastelands and everything. And their deck, of course, plays 4 wastelands and Sowing Mycospawn, so it's almost like they're playing like 8 wasteland effects. So we Beanstalk. Unfortunately, they're very smart, and they once upon a time before my Beanstalk resolves, because I probably would have just forced to draw a card and stopped their selection. All right, so they have Wasteland. I am going to Lorien Revealed to go get a land and just hope that they don't... Okay, so they're Cosmic Commanding for 0 value. Basically, it's just like a 2-mana draw card, effectively. It has a bunch of different modes. I don't think this card's very good. Certainly not good against Murktide Regent, because you have to pay 9 mana to exile a Murktide Regent. I have Ugin, very strong. So we're looking at a turn 3 Thought Knotseater. It's only turn 3 because they took a turn off to waste me. So I think this is a force. I mean, we've drawn very good here with the Beanstalk into double force. They Fairy Macabre, which is prescient because they see the Murktide, and I actually do have a second Murktide. So they prevent me from being able to Murktide there. But actually, I can go get a land and I can Murktide anyway. It's not a big Murktide. They took all the sorceries and instants, so it's just a 4/4 flyer, but they are doing damage to themselves. Okay, Sowing Mycospawn, taking out one of my land, getting a Wasteland, taking out another land. These are the play patterns. So I forced the card itself just because I want to draw a card and try to find a land, and I do find a land. So that was a good call. I waste them off of their Eye of Ugin. Now, you could definitely argue that like I shouldn't be wasting at this point, but you'll see what happens here. I attack. They cast a Vexing Bubble, which doesn't matter right now. Cast another Beanstalk, and I swing in again. They pop their bauble, taking damage. Kozilek's Command create a bunch of tokens, but it doesn't matter. They're so low from these ancient tombs, and my just 4/4, like little engine that could, hitting me in the air every turn. Game 3. So now we're on the draw against the Eldrazi Menace. I shouldn't call it the Eldrazi Menace because I would take playing against Eldrazi like every day of the week compared to playing against Rescam. I cannot stand playing against Rescam. Spoiler alert for round 5. Okay, so here we go. This hand is not terrible. I mean, it doesn't have any early interaction, but Life from the Loam, like, can we dream of a Wastelock? I didn't see any basic lands in their deck. So, against the sideboard, I think I did bring in the Swamp. Yeah, I took out an Underground Sea and I brought in the Swamp. That's the only other change I made. Okay. Let's get it on. So they start with 7 cards as well. Ancient Tomb, but they don't have any play, which is great. So, you're going to Ancient Tomb go. I'm going to waste go. All right, turn 2. I have Ugin. Definitely something that I would like to waste. I play out tap land because I'm going to have to eventually play it out. I might as well bait a wasteland now. Sowing Mycospawn. They get a wasteland. They waste me. Okay. So I just have to chill here. Ponder. I don't find another land. They start swinging in with their 3/3. Thought-Knot Seer. That's going to get forced. I would have loved to have hung on to that. I'm just not finding land. This is a pretty precarious situation. I do have Force. I have Dismember, which can kill their creature. But I've got this sneaky tap land. So I play my tap land and basically just have to hope that they don't have any more waste effects. They swing in for 3. I'm starting to get low in life. I have to force another Thought-Knot Seer. But crucially, they have this Yavimaya out. And watch what I do with it. Now, I'm very proud of how I played this because I got all my lands back and I was very patient because I am under the gun here. This is hitting for 3 and they have a lot of other big fatties that can come down and hit me. I'm just going to take the damage and I'm going to start wasting. Go after their Eye of Ugin first because that does have the ability to search for fatties. They can start they could go get another Sowing Mycospawn, which is probably the best draw on their deck right now to get rid of my lands. Well, actually not anymore now that I'm loaming, and I loam again. Okay, I've got 8 life. I'm taking a lot of damage. I loam again, and I'm going to go ahead and go up the Beanstalk here, and I'm going to push. So I took a turn off of wasting to just develop my board a little bit and get that clock off my back. They hard cast Elvish Spirit Guide. They Boseiju, which I think is a mistake, frankly. Like, that Beanstalk had already got me a card. Like, you're going to ramp me? I don't think that was a good play. So now I have even more mana to draw. So heck yeah, I'm going to loam. And I'm going to waste you again. This time I'm going after the 2 mana producing lands because you got plenty of life. And this was a hard play to make because it's just 2 damage. But like when is it going to be a convenient time for me to kill this? I'm going to dismember now because I want to keep the wastelands coming. I need to keep them off land. That's how they win is they top deck Sowing Mycospawn and they're just back in it, right? So get my frog out finally. So I finally stabilized at 3 life. Null Elemental Blast. I've never seen this card before. Counter target multicolored spell. Destroy target multicolored permanent. It's a colorless mana. You have to pay like the wasteland mana or the waste mana. So yeah, they kill my frog. That's some sideboard tech. Considering that the only gold card in my entire deck is Psychic Frog. It's very specialized hate for a very powerful card. And I think, did they scoop here? It's not letting me advance for some reason. I think maybe they scooped. Because, if you look at it, like, they took a draw. Yep, and they scooped. So what was going to happen? I was just going to Bowmasters and gradually try to claw back with up the Beanstalk, but I was never going to let them out of the Wastelock. I was going to go after, probably go after Yavimaya Coast because it's a source of colorless. And yeah, once you have the Wastelock squeeze, you keep that Vice turning. Final round. This is for the trophy versus Tom Jab. Now, Tom Jab is an extremely experienced Stifle Knot player. And if you look, they've been playing Stifle Knot back before Modern Horizons 3 made Stifle Knot really powerful. They played some Beanstalk control, but they've always been playing Stifle Knot. It's been a pet deck. Let's see. Actually, I'm not sure how far back they were playing Stifle Knot. This might have been Stifle Knot. Let's take a look. Nope. So, anyway. But they're like dedicated legacy player. And so when I see somebody playing this much Stifle Knot for several months in a row, I think probably on Stifle Knot. So, let's see what I keep. I win the draw that I roll, which is great. This is a strong hand. It has Stifle to protect against Wastelands to potentially deprive them of their own fetch lands. And it's got lots of removal, which is very key. Like, Fatal Push is great against Stifle Knot. Against Phyrexian Dreadnought. So I go ahead and grab my basic and I ponder here. And these are all good cards. I think it was like a Brainstorm, Ponder, and a Lorien Revealed. So I'm just going to keep this. But they grief me. And I'm like, oh no. Here it is. Like, I'm about to get the trophy. Now I have to go against Rescam. They take the Fatal Push. So I'm coming in with my second land here. And I'm just going super slow. Not trying to ponder or anything. I do have a Dismember, and I think it's worth just... so the important thing to note is if they discard their entire hand to Dismember, they can keep this alive. But since I have Stifle, I can just Stifle one of those activations. So I'm going to get an extra land, and I'm intending to do just that play. So I play at the Underground Sea, and I'm like, okay, let's dismember this. If they want to pitch their entire hand, I will happily Stifle, because they won't have anything left in their hand to force. But they just let it die wisely, because they're a good player, and they've got a lot of experience. And they know when to let their frogs go. So I've been playing so carefully around Daze. They have Hymn to Torok. Hymn away my Wasteland and my Frog. The Wasteland doesn't really matter. I've kind of established at this point that they're just going to have however much mana they're going to have. But I do get a Murktide region out, which is good. But they Daze. So you could say it was hasty, but I mean, I finally played in the Daze after all these turns of being very disciplined. Double Daze. It was double Daze, by the way. So, yeah, I'm just top decking trying to find stuff, but I do find a Beanstalk, which is good. And a Stifle. I don't Stifle the Troll, because, again, I just don't think mana is going to matter here. It's the same reason I'm not firing out this Wasteland. What I'm planning to do is there is a Lorien Revealed in my graveyard, and I plan to fetch that. They force the Beanstalk, which is aggressive. They him me again, so I'm hellbent. They have one card in hand, I've got 0. I keep drawing Murderous Cuts, which they don't have any threats to kill. So I guess in that regard, I'm winning. Beanstalk again, and then yeah, we just pass, and they reanimate. That's fine. Go for it. I'm gonna cut it. I'm gonna draw some cards. They're gonna take the frog, but I have this card in my deck called Mystic Sanctuary, and it brings the Lorien back. I was about to draw 5 cards, so they scooped. All right, game 2. This is the final game that we're going to recap here. All right. So let's take a look at how I sideboarded. So against Rescam, which I presume they're on the combo version. I'm not actually sure if they were on the combo version because I never saw a Entomb. They could have just been playing essentially blue-black aggro. But I actually boarded out a couple of my frogs because I was afraid they might reanimate them. I'm not sure if that's correct. But I do think it's correct to take out the tempo cards because I'm on the draw. And, you know, it's not about mana, right? Like, it's about who has the powerful cards and gets to put them on the table. This is like tap-out magic, right? So I've got, what did I bring in? I just brought in the 4 Bowmasters, and I think I brought in the Carpet Flowers. Okay, so here we go. This is a hand. This is a great hand. Because I've got Insulation versus their combo plan. I've got extra mana, and the surest way I'm going to lose is they're going to waste me out of the game, or they're going to reanimate Atraxa. Anything in between, I'm probably favored if they're not doing one of those two things. My deck's way more mana hungry than their deck is. And they can definitely capitalize on that. They ponder. Right. And this is where, like, I wouldn't normally make this play. I'm actually kind of almost embarrassed by it. But it's like, hey, you know, I bet they only have 1 basic swamp and 1 basic island in their deck. Probably 4 underground seas. Let's just waste. And let's surgical. And I meant to actually surgical in their draw step. But you can see I had the draw stuff selected. For some reason, it skipped over it. So, yeah. This is what they had. I was able to exile their Underground Seas. I was able to look at their deck, which did indeed only have... I don't think they're playing the ETB tap land. Oh, wait. They do have an Undercity Sewers. So they have Undercity Sewers, 2 Wastelands, 1 Island, 1 Mystic Sanctuary. Or that's not a Mystic Sanctuary. Sorry, they don't have a Mystic Sanctuary. They have an Island, a Swamp, 2 Wastelands, and Undercity Sewers. Those are their only mana sources for the rest of the game. Look at their hand. They've got a Hymn to Torok, never castable. And Psychic Frog is going to be very difficult to cast. So at this point, they basically scooped. And yeah, it was like kind of an anticlimactic end. Because I think this would have been a really exciting game. But when you have the chance to just like completely debilitate your opponent, why not? Like, maybe that was just going to be like them forcing it, and it would have been a 0 mana Hymn to Torok, right? But I went for it. And yeah, I'm pretty happy with that play. Like, it felt weird, and it felt like this is such bad value because what if, they untap and like entomb, reanimate, or what if they grief me and then reanimate the grief? Like, and I just threw away this surgical extraction to remove land that when land might not even matter in this game. But yeah, I went for it. So that again is a recap of my 5-0 with Bant Beans, with Bug Beans. You can follow me on Twitter. Be excellent. You can also follow me here on YouTube where you're watching this. I am posting a lot of videos. I did a lot of Nadu. Let me just show you some of what I've been up to lately. I genuinely think that this is powerful, but it's hard. It's very, very hard. And I lost a lot with this. What is a lot easier, however, jumping over and playing something like this, which just eschews green completely, and it's just like a very... It goes under the opponent. It stifles other lands. It dazes. It has 4 dazes, and then it wins off of Murktide or Delver of Secrets or Psychic Frog. I think for a blue-black shell, if you refuse to play Grief, which I do, I refuse to play Grief. I will never play a Grief again. I will never cast a Grief again in my life. If you refuse to play Grief, this is a good blue-black shell of Murktide and Psychic Frog. And then I threw in Delver of Secrets, which made me feel kind of dirty. This could easily be Nethergoyf, which I think would probably actually be better than Delver of Secrets here. But the main problem is Nethergoyf kind of does use your graveyard, and Murktide uses your graveyard, so they stomp on each other a little bit. But very clean mana base. I actually played 2 islands in here. Another deck that I played a lot during my playtesting that was just winning a lot more, like easy wins, quick wins, was blue-black Stifle Nut. And then, of course, like, this is really cool. Oh, sorry. Since you're watching, let me show you this. This was a Beanstalk game where I won with exact 10 damage on my opponent with 1 second on the clock. 1 second, game 3. It was, my heart was racing like I just like run a marathon or something. Like, and I haven't actually run a marathon. I've run a half marathon, but it felt like that basically, like just incredibly exhilarating, winning with 1 second on the clock with exact damage from a Murktide. But the what I did for a while, I went down this Nadu Breakfast rabbit hole, and I had a lot of fun with it. It's a great deck, but it's an AB combo deck like Stifle Nut, and if you're willing to accept that like a lot of your games are just going to be non-games because you don't draw your combo, go for it. For me, I love Bug Beans because you're always in it. Like, you're so low to the ground that you're never completely wasted out of the game. You're always like 1 or 2 lands from being able to cast a Psychic Frog or Murktide, or you're just a Beanstalk. I mean, you saw when I was like him to 0 cards and I was able to rebuild my hand with Beanstalk. Like, I love the flexibility. I love that you're always in it, right? There are like very few non-games when you're playing Beanstalk, and when you're playing Bug Beanstalk specifically. The reason I think this is like a completely different archetype and way better than like the 5-color and 4-color beans, which I played 5-color beans at Eternal Weekend, and I went 6-5 out of the 11 rounds. It wasn't a terrible performance, but it wasn't great. I really wish I'd just gotten really good with this build, because this is just so much simpler. With so many wastelands, you really do want to be like a 2-color deck, and if you splash, you want to have a very, very light splash. So that is my parting wisdom to you all, if you want to consider wisdom. It's my opinion, man. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you keep going out there slinging the beans, and look forward to some more videos now that I'm not as sick as I used to be. There was a long gap in my video upload, and it wasn't because I wasn't playing. It was just because I was sick, and I was coughing a lot, and I didn't want to record videos where I was like hoarse or coughing a lot. So, but I'm better. You don't need to say get well soon or anything. I'm totally chill now. So look for some videos from me in the near future, focusing on blue legacy control mage action. Till next time, be excellent to each other and party on, dudes.